हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक। तो हम IAS PCS पाठशाला की जो चैनल है टेलीग्राम, उसको अकॉर्डिंग फॉलो कर रहे हैं। तो हमने म्यूनिसिपैलिटीज़ तक पॉलिटी जो है वो लक्ष्मीकांत से पढ़ा। अब देखो, सर ने बोला है कि जो PDFs उन्होंने दिया है उसी को फॉलो करने के लिए, मतलब ये सब पढ़ने के लिए जो पढ़ना हो वो उन्होंने PDF के थ्रू उसके चैनल में अपडेट कर दिया है। तो ये वाला जो टॉपिक है ये है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एंड नॉन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज के रिगार्डिंग है। तो हम इस PDF को पढ़ने की कोशिश करेंगे और समझने की कोशिश करेंगे, ठीक है। तो इन्होंने एक तरीके का समराइजेशन यहाँ पर किया है। देखो, सारी चीज़ें यहाँ पर मेंशन्ड है, जैसे कि क्या है ये, मान लो इलेक्शन कमीशन, तो इसका फंक्शन क्या है, कौन से आर्टिकल में दिया गया है, इसका कंपोजिशन क्या है, अपॉइंटमेंट कैसे होता है, टर्म क्या है, क्वालिफिकेशन कैसे है, क्या है, रिमूवल कैसे होता है, रेजिग्नेशन किसको देना पड़ता है, और सेकेंड टर्म और री अपॉइंटमेंट पॉसिबल है कि नहीं वो भी यहाँ पर लिखा है। मतलब ऐसे करके पॉइंट बना के आपको याद रखना है। और फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट, जैसे कि CJI जो होता है, चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया, वो फर्दर प्रैक्टिस नहीं कर सकते। जैसे क्या फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट की कुछ क्या प्रोविज़न होगा, देन कौन सी मिनिस्ट्री के अंदर आता है, और एडिशनल नोट्स कुछ यहाँ पर दिया गया है। तो हमको देखिए, बॉडीज़ ये सारे जो है एक्चुअल में बॉडीज़ है, इलेक्शन कमीशन, UPSC, SPSC। तो इस कॉलम को ब्लैंक नहीं रख के यहाँ पर लिखना था कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल और नॉन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज़ लिखना था, ठीक है। तो हम इसको एक एक करके देखते हैं। देखो, एक ही PDF है बट ये बहुत डिटेल्ड है। आई मीन छोटी तरीके से लिखा है तो इतना सा लग रहा है, बट बहुत कुछ यहाँ पर है याद रखने के लिए, पढ़ने के लिए। तो चलिए हम धीरे धीरे इसको पढ़ने की कोशिश करेंगे। तो इलेक्शन कमीशन का फंक्शन देखिए पहले, कि इलेक्शंस टू पार्लियामेंट, स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर, प्रेसिडेंट एंड VP, ठीक है। तो ये इलेक्शन कमीशन, आई थिंक 2 इलेक्शन कमीशन होते हैं। एक है तो सेंटर का होता है, और जो इंडियन लेवल का उसको इलेक्शन कमीशन ही बोलते हैं ना, और एक होता है स्टेट इलेक्शन कमीशन, आई थिंक। तो यहाँ पर है क्या, स्टेट इलेक्शन कमीशन। खैर नहीं है। देखो, फंक्शंस क्या है ना, इलेक्शंस टू पार्लियामेंट, स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर, अच्छा ये तो दिया गया है ना, इलेक्शन कमीशन दिए तो स्टेट का हो गया। अब प्रेसिडेंट, देन वाइस प्रेसिडेंट, तो ये सब इलेक्शन कमीशन कराता है। उसके बाद ये कौन से आर्टिकल में दिया गया है, देखो तो आर्टिकल 324 में ये दिया गया है इलेक्शन कमीशन के बारे में। इसका कंपोजिशन है चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर, देन इलेक्शन कमिश्नर, सच नंबर्स फिक्स्ड बाय प्रेसिडेंट। अपॉइंटमेंट, प्रेसिडेंट ऑन रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ PM, प्रेसिडेंट इसका अपॉइंटमेंट करवाता है PM के रिकमेंडेशन के ऊपर बेस करके। देन LOP, मतलब LOP क्या है इस तो नहीं पता। यूनिट कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर नॉमिनेटेड बाय द प्राइम मिनिस्टर। इसका टर्म देखो कि नॉट स्पेसिफाइड इन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एज डिटरमाइंड बाय प्रेसिडेंट, अदरवाइज अप टू 6 ईयर्स और 65 ईयर्स ऑफ एज। तो टर्म 65 ईयर्स तक हो सकते हैं या फिर 6 ईयर्स मैक्सिमम। देन क्वालिफिकेशंस देखो, नॉट स्पेसिफाइड इन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। अब रिमूवल कैसे, एन इलेक्शन कमिश्नर रिमूव बाय प्रेसिडेंट ऑन एडवाइस ऑफ चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर, सिक्योरिटी ऑफ 10 ईयर, सेम प्रोसेस एज रिमूवल ऑफ SC सुप्रीम कोर्ट जज। अब रेजिग्नेशन इसको कौन किसको देगा, प्रेसिडेंट को देगा। सेकेंड टर्म और रीअपॉइंटमेंट इसका अलाउड नहीं है। फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हैज़ नॉट डिबर्ड रिटायरिंग इलेक्शन कमिश्नर्स फ्रॉम फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट। मिनिस्ट्री पेनी, तो ये मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ लॉ एंड जस्टिस के अंदर आता है। एडिशनल नोट्स क्या देखो, CEC एंड EC हैव इक्वल पावर्स एंड अलाउंसेज सिमिलर टू SC जज, डिसीजंस आर टेकन बाय मेजॉरिटी वोट। A search committee headed by the Minister of Law and Justice plus 2 other members not below the rank of secretary will prepare a panel of 5 candidates for consideration by the selection committee। तो ये एक कमीशन, ये एक क्या है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी हो गया एक, ठीक। अब देखो UPSC, तो ये क्या करते हैं, रिक्रूटमेंट टू ऑल इंडिया एंड सेंट्रल सर्विसेज, एडवाइसेस द गवर्नमेंट ऑन प्रमोशन एंड डिसिप्लिनरी मैटर्स। ये आर्टिकल 315 से लेकर 323 तक है। और इसका जो कॉम्पोजिशन है क्या है, चेयरपर्सन एंड मेंबर्स, सच नंबर्स फिक्स्ड बाय प्रेसिडेंट। अपॉइंटमेंट प्रेसिडेंट करवाता है। टर्म जो है अकॉर्डिंग टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अप टू 6 ईयर्स और 65 ईयर्स ऑफ एज। तो यहाँ पर UPSC जो कमीशन मतलब इसमें जो बैठेगा चेयरमैन जो भी होगा, जो मेंबर्स होते हैं जो इंटरव्यू लेते हैं उसका शायद उसका बात कर रहा है। ठीक। अब देखो टर्म क्या रहेगा कि अकॉर्डिंग टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अप टू 6 ईयर्स और 65 ईयर्स ऑफ एज। क्वालिफिकेशंस क्या रहेगा अकॉर्डिंग टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हाफ ऑफ मेंबर्स ऑफ द कमीशन शुड बी हेल्ड एन ऑफिस फॉर एटलीस्ट 10 ईयर्स आइदर अंडर द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया और एनी स्टेट। तो वही IAS IPS ऑफिसर्स ही यहाँ पर बैठते हैं। देन रिमूवल can be removed by president only in cases of insolvency, office of profit or infirmity of mind or body, misbehavior defined in constitution only upon binding advice of supreme court after inquiry। इसका रेजिग्नेशन प्रेसिडेंट के पास जाएगा। और सेकेंड टर्म रीअपॉइंटमेंट नॉट अलाउड। फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट चेयरपर्सन नॉट अलाउड। मेंबर्स ऑफ UPSC may be appointed as chairperson of UPSC और SPSC but not any other employment। तो ये चेयरपर्सन या फिर मेंबर जो होगा ये चेयरपर्सन में ही जा सकता है, चेयरपर्सन बन सकता है, बाकी कुछ और नहीं बन सकता। और जो चेयरपर्सन होगा वो फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए एलिजिबल नहीं रहेगा। मिनिस्टर ऑफ पर्सनल के अंदर आता है ये। अब देखो एडिशनल नोट्स, तो रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ UPSC आर नॉट बाइंडिंग ऑन द गवर्नमेंट बट नॉन एक्सेप्टेंस मस्ट बी अप्रूव्ड बाय कैबिनेट कमिटी ऑन अपॉइंटमेंट्स। एनुअल रिपोर्ट ऑफ UPSC मस्ट बी प्लेस्ड बिफोर पार्लियामेंट बाय द president along with a memorandum explaining the cases where the advice of UPSC was not accepted. Recommendation of UPSC are not binding on the government but non-acceptance must be approved by cabinet committee। ये अच्छी बात है। On appointments, annual report of UPSC must be placed before parliament by the president along with a memorandum explaining the cases where the advice of UPSC was not accepted। नेक्स्ट देखिए SPSC तो रिक्रूटमेंट टू स्टेट सर्विसेज, एडवाइसेस द गवर्नमेंट ऑन प्रमोशन एंड डिसिप्लिनरी मैटर्स, असिस्ट्स इन फ्रेमिंग रूल्स एंड ऑफ अपॉइंटमेंट टू जुडिशियल सर्विस ऑफ द स्टेट अदर देन और टू द पोस्ट ऑफ डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज। ये आर्टिकल 315 से लेकर 323 ये सेम ही तो है भाई। ठीक है। अब देखो इसका चेयरपर्सन और मेंबर सेम ही है। ये इसका जो रेजिग्नेशन होगा ये प्रेसिडेंट के अपॉइंटमेंट प्रेसिडेंट नहीं देगा, इसका गवर्नर देगा। और अकॉर्डिंग टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अप टू 6 ईयर्स और 62 ईयर्स ऑफ एज, यहाँ पर था 65 ईयर्स ऑफ एज। अब देखो अकॉर्डिंग टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हाफ ऑफ मेंबर्स ऑफ द कमीशन शुड हैव हेल्ड एंड ऑफिस फॉर एटलीस्ट 10 ईयर्स आइदर अंडर द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया और एनी स्टेट, कैन बी रिमूव बाय प्रेसिडेंट ओनली इन केस ऑफ इंसॉल्वेंसी। सेम ही है। अब इसका जो रेजिग्नेशन होगा ये गवर्नर के पास जाएगा क्योंकि जो अपॉइंटमेंट देगा उसी के पास जाएगा। तो इसका रीअपॉइंटमेंट नॉट अलाउड है। और देखो चेयरपर्सन में भी अपॉइंटेड है चेयरपर्सन और मेंबर ऑफ UPSC और चेयरपर्सन ऑफ एनी अदर SPSC बट नॉट एनी अदर एम्प्लॉयमेंट। मेंबर्स में भी अपॉइंटेड चेयरपर्सन और मेंबर्स ऑफ UPSC और चेयरपर्सन ऑफ एनी SPSC बट नॉट एनी अदर एम्प्लॉयमेंट। ठीक। इसका कोई मिनिस्ट्री है नहीं। रिकमेंडेशंस एडिशनल नोट क्या है ना, रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ SPSC आर नॉट बाइंडिंग ऑन द गवर्नमेंट। एनुअल रिपोर्ट ऑफ SPSC मस्ट बी प्लेस्ड बिफोर स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर बाय द गवर्नर अलॉन्ग विद ए मेमोरेंडम एक्सप्लेनिंग। वही सेम है UPSC की तरह ही। ठीक है। चलिए नेक्स्ट देखते हैं हम फाइनेंस कमीशन। तो ये एडवाइजिंग द गवर्नमेंट ऑन टैक्स डिवोल्यूशन टू स्टेट्स, ग्रांट्स इन एड एंड अदर मैटर्स रेफर्ड टू इट बाय द प्रेसिडेंट इन द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ साउंड फाइनेंस। ये आर्टिकल 280 में है। तो फाइनेंस कमीशन आर्टिकल 280 में है। इसका मेंबर देखिए चेयरपर्सन एंड 4 अदर मेंबर्स। इसका जो अपॉइंटमेंट होगा वो प्रेसिडेंट देगा। और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अथॉरिटीज पार्लियामेंट टू डिटरमाइन द क्वालिफिकेशंस अकॉर्डिंग टू फाइनेंस कमीशन एक्ट 1951। चेयरमैन पर्सन विथ एक्सपीरियंस इन पब्लिक अफेयर्स। तो इसका मेंबर्स है जो भी ये है ना क्वालिफिकेशंस है इसका। मेंबर्स ये वाला था चेयरपर्सन एंड 4 अदर मेंबर्स। हाँ ये क्वालिफिकेशंस है। तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑथराइज पार्लियामेंट टू डिटरमाइन द क्वालिफिकेशंस अकॉर्डिंग टू फाइनेंस कमिटी एक्ट 1951। चेयरमैन पर्सन विथ एक्सपीरियंस इन पब्लिक अफेयर्स प्लस मेंबर्स जज ऑफ ए हाई कोर्ट और एनी पर्सन एलिजिबल टू सच अपॉइंटमेंट, पर्सन विथ स्पेशलाइज्ड नॉलेज इन फाइनेंस एंड accounts of government, person with wide experience in financial matters and administration, person with special knowledge of economics। ठीक है। और कुछ है नहीं। ये देखो मिनिस्टर ऑफ फाइनेंस का अंडर आएगा। और एडिशनल नोट क्या है ना, कॉन्स्टिट्यूटेड एवरी 5th ईयर और एट सच अर्लियर टाइम्स एज डिटरमाइंड बाय द प्रेसिडेंट, परफॉर्म्स एडवाइजरी रोल ओनली एंड सबमिट्स इट्स रिपोर्ट टू प्रेसिडेंट हु प्लेसेस इट बिफोर द पार्लियामेंट विद ए मेमोरेंडम एक्सप्लेनिंग द एक्शंस टेकन ऑन द रिकमेंडेशंस। ठीक है। नेक्स्ट हम देखते हैं। नेक्स्ट है GST काउंसिल। तो ये कोऑपरेशन, इसका फंक्शन कोऑपरेशन एंड कोऑर्डिनेशन बिटवीन सेंटर एंड स्टेट्स फॉर स्मूथ एंड एफिशिएंट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ जीएसटी इन दी कंट्री, ये आर्टिकल 279A में है। और इसका देखो मेंबर्स है यूनियन, वोट शेयर 33%, फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर एंड मिनिस्टर ऑफ स्टेट फॉर फाइनेंस और रेवेन्यू प्लस स्टेट्स मिनिस्टर एनी प्रेफरेबली फाइनेंस एंड चेयरपर्सन ऑफ CBIC परमानेंट इनवाइटी नॉन वोटिंग, कुछ मतलब नॉन वोटिंग के थ्रू होता है। और कॉन्स्टिट्यूटेड बाय प्रेसिडेंट, तो इसका अपॉइंटमेंट है कॉन्स्टिट्यूटेड बाय प्रेसिडेंट, बाकी कुछ है नहीं इसमें। और मिनिस्टर ऑफ फाइनेंस के अंदर ही आता है, चेयरपर्सन यूनियन फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर एंड वाइस चेयरपर्सन चोजन अमंग मिनिस्टर्स फ्रॉम द स्टेट्स, डिसीजन मेकिंग बेस्ड ऑन 3/4 ऑफ मेजोरिटी अपॉइंटेड वोट्स ऑफ मेंबर्स प्रेजेंट एंड वोटिंग, कोरम होते 50%। तो टोटली समराइज्ड है। हमको क्या है, कोई फर्स्ट टाइम पढ़ रहा हो तो समझने में दिक्कत आ रहा है ना, मेरे को तो आ रहा है। अब देखो नेशनल कमीशन फॉर एससीज, बट थोड़ी बहुत समझ में आ रहा है कि इवैल्यूएटिंग द वर्किंग ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एंड लीगल सेफगार्ड्स अवेलेबल टू एससीज एंड इंक्वायर इनटू स्पेसिफिक कंप्लेंट्स। तो नेशनल कमीशन फॉर एससीज है, ये आर्टिकल 338 में है। चेयरपर्सन, वाइस चेयरपर्सन एंड 3 अदर मेंबर्स इसका रहेगा। प्रेसिडेंट इसका अपॉइंटमेंट करेगा। कंडीशंस ऑफ सर्विसेज एंड टेन्योर डिटरमाइंड बाय प्रेसिडेंट, करंट टाइम होचे 3 years एंड original article 338 provide for special officer for SCs and STs government set up and a parallel non-statutory multi-member commission in 1978 for SCs and STs. Government replaced special officer for SCs and STs with a high-level national commission for SCs and STs in 65th constitutional amendment of 1990. Government bifurcated the combined commission into separate bodies through 89th constitutional amendment of 2003. ये देखो मिनिस्टर ऑफ सोशल जस्टिस एंड एम्पावरमेंट, ये मिनिस्ट्री के अंदर आता है। एनुअल रिपोर्ट ऑफ कमीशन इज प्रेजेंटेड टू द प्रेसिडेंट हु प्लेसेस इट बिफोर द पार्लियामेंट एंड फॉरवर्ड्स इट टू गवर्नर्स हु प्लेस इट बिफोर द स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर विथ मेमोरेंडम्स एक्सप्लेनिंग एक्शंस टेकन ऑन द रिकमेंडेशन एंड एक्सप्लेनिंग द रीजंस फॉर एनी cases of non-acceptance while inquiring into specific cases. Commission has powers similar to that of a civil court. Central and state governments must consult the commission on all major policy matters affecting SCs. नेक्स्ट देखते हैं नेशनल कमीशन फॉर एसटीज, तो ये इवैल्यूएटिंग द वर्किंग ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एंड लीगल सेफगार्ड्स अवेलेबल टू एसटीज एंड इंक्वायर इनटू स्पेसिफिक कंप्लेंट्स, आर्टिकल 338A में है। देन नेशनल कमीशन फॉर बीसीज मींस बैकवर्ड क्लासेस, लगभग ये सेम ही पर्पस है। ये देखो आर्टिकल 338B में है, इसका भी वही सेम मेंबर है, 3 अदर मेंबर्स, चेयरपर्सन, वाइस चेयरपर्सन, अपॉइंटमेंट प्रेसिडेंट करवाएगा। तो ये सारा को मर्ज कर देना था एक साथ, ठीक है, ऐसे अलग करने की कोई ज़रूरत था नहीं। ये देखो कारण टर्म भी 3 years है, फिर ये तो बेकार हो गया। अब देखो एस्टेब्लिश्ड एज स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी 1993, तो ये जो बीसीज है मतलब नेशनल कमीशन फॉर बीसी बैकवर्ड क्लासेस, ये स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी है, एस्टेब्लिश्ड इन 1993 आफ्टर मंडल केस जजमेंट बाय सुप्रीम कोर्ट कन्फर्ड विद कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल स्टेटस इन 102 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट 2018। और ये भी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ सोशल जस्टिस एंड एम्पावरमेंट का अंदर आता है। और ये देखो सिमिलर टू NCSC, तो इसको लिखने की कोई ज़रूरत है नहीं, ऐसे मर्ज कर देना चाहिए था। चलिए अब सेम ही है तो आपको भी आसानी होगा याद रखने में। स्पेशल ऑफिसर फॉर लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज, तो इन्वेस्टिगेट मैटर्स पर्टेनिंग टू द ग्रीवेंसेज अराइजिंग आउट ऑफ नॉन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल सेफगार्ड्स और स्कीम्स टू सेफगार्ड लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज, ये आर्टिकल 350B में है लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज के बारे में। इसका अपॉइंटमेंट प्रेसिडेंट करेगा, बट इसका मेंबर कौन होगा कुछ नहीं पता। ओरिजिनली कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डिड नॉट मेक एनी प्रोविजन विद रेस्पेक्ट टू द ऑफिस, इट वाज क्रिएटेड following the recommendation of State Reorganization Commission issuing 7 Constitutional Amendment of 1956। इसका मिनिस्ट्री माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स है और ऑपरेट्स अंडर मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स। तो ये क्या एडिशनल नोट होगा, चलो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स के अंदर ये आता है स्पेशल ऑफिसर और फॉर लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज। देन देखो कंट्रोलर एंड ऑडिटर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया CAG, तो ये हेड्स द इंडियन ऑडिट्स एंड अकाउंट्स डिपार्टमेंट, ये आर्टिकल 148 में आता है। तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि कंट्रोलर एंड ऑडिटर जनरल का जो है आर्टिकल 148 में है। और इसका क्या होगा बॉडी, ये खुद ही एक पर्सन होता है, एक है ना, एक जो इसको चेयर को होल्ड करता है। प्रेसिडेंट इसका अपॉइंटमेंट करता है, सब्सक्राइब्स टू ओथ बिफोर द प्रेसिडेंट, इसको ओथ लेना पड़ता है। कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एम्पावर्स द पार्लियामेंट टू डिटरमाइन कंडीशंस ऑफ सर्विसेज, CAG एक्ट 1971 अप टू 6 years, 6 years इसका टर्म है और 60 या फिर मैक्सिमम 65 years तक। अब सेम प्रोसेस है रिमूवल ऑफ SC जज को रिमूव करने के लिए, वही सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जज को रिमूव करने के जो इम्पीचमेंट होता है ये कुछ करना होगा। इसको रेजिग्नेशन प्रेसिडेंट को देना पड़ता है और रीअपॉइंटमेंट नॉट अलाउड है। CAG इज एन एजेंट ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट एंड कंडक्ट्स ऑडिट्स ऑफ CFI, CFS एंड डिपार्टमेंटल ऑडिट्स एंड ऑन देयर बिहाफ। CAG सबमिट्स इट्स ऑडिट रिपोर्ट्स टू द प्रेसिडेंट हु प्लेसेस देम बिफोर द पार्लियामेंट आफ्टर व्हिच दे आर स्क्रूटिनाइज्ड बाय पब्लिक अकाउंट्स कमिटी। तो ये सारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज़ चल रहे, देखो यहाँ पर लिखा है नॉन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी नीचे वाला, तो ये सारा सब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज़ है। अब नेक्स्ट देखो एडवोकेट जनरल ऑफ स्टेट, तो ये हाईएस्ट लॉ ऑफिसर, सॉरी ये एक है अटॉर्नी जनरल ऑफ इंडिया और एडवोकेट जनरल ऑफ स्टेट। तो ये हाईएस्ट लॉ ऑफिसर ऑफ कंट्री है जो अटॉर्नी जनरल है, और एडवोकेट जनरल है ये हाईएस्ट लॉ ऑफिसर ऑफ स्टेट है। अटॉर्नी जनरल के बारे में आर्टिकल 76 में दिया गया और एडवोकेट जनरल के बारे में आर्टिकल 165 में दिया गया। इसका जो अटॉर्नी जनरल ऑफ इंडिया है इसका अपॉइंटमेंट प्रेसिडेंट देता है, और स्टेट का एडवोकेट जनरल ऑफ स्टेट का देता है गवर्नर। अब होल्ड्स ऑफिस ड्यूरिंग द प्लेजर ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट, तो प्रेसिडेंट जब चाहे इसको हटा सकता है। टर्म्स ऑफ सर्विसेज एज डिटरमाइंड बाय प्रेसिडेंट, होल्ड्स ऑफिस ड्यूरिंग द गवर्नर जब चाहे हटा सकते हैं। मस्ट बी क्वालिफाइड टू बिकम अ जज इन सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया, अटॉर्नी जनरल बनने के लिए वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जज होने का जो क्वालिफिकेशन होती है सेम है, और ये भी जज इन हाई कोर्ट का जो वही क्वालिफिकेशन इसमें चल जाता है, एडवोकेट जनरल ऑफ स्टेट। ठीक, आप बाकी देखो इसको रिजाइन करना है तो जो अपॉइंटमेंट दे रहा है उसी के पास रेजिग्नेशन भी भेजना पड़ेगा। और अटॉर्नी जनरल जो है वो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ लॉ एंड जस्टिस के अंदर आती है, इसका कोई मिनिस्ट्री है नहीं एडवोकेट जनरल का। अब पॉजेज राइट टू ऑडियंस अक्रॉस ऑल कोर्ट्स इन इंडिया, अटॉर्नी जनरल की बात हो रही है। एडिशनल नोट्स की पॉजेज राइट टू ऑडियंस across all courts in India and right to speak and take part in parliamentary proceedings in both houses without the right to vote but enjoys all privileges, is not a full-time counsel of government and is not debarred from private practice. Right to speak and take part in proceedings in state legislature without the right to vote but enjoys all privileges, is not a full-time counsel of government and is not debarred from private practice. तो प्राइवेट प्रैक्टिस मतलब ये नहीं समझा, बट क्या बोलना चाहता है ये इसको। अब देखो नॉन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज, तो नेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन, सर इसका फंक्शन है रिव्यू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एंड लीगल सेफगार्ड्स पर्टेनिंग टू ह्यूमन राइट्स, सबमिट इट्स एनुअल रिपोर्ट टू सेंट्रल एंड कॉन्सर्न स्टेट गवर्नमेंट, देन प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स एक्ट 1993 इसके अकॉर्डिंग बना था। और चेयरपर्सन एंड अदर 5 मेंबर्स, एक्स ऑफिशियो मेंबर 7, चेयरपर्सन ऑफ NCSC, NCST, NCBC, NCW, NCPCR, NCM एंड चीफ कमिश्नर फॉर PWD। इसका अपॉइंटमेंट प्रेसिडेंट देता है ऑन द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ कमिटी कॉन्सिस्टिंग PM, स्पीकर ऑफ लेजिस्लेटिव LS लोकसभा, डेप्यूटी चेयरपर्सन ऑफ राज्यसभा, लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन इन बोथ हाउस एंड यूनियन होम मिनिस्टर। इसका टर्म जो है अप टू 3 ईयर्स है और 70 ईयर्स ऑफ एज, वाओ, देन 70 ईयर्स तक इसको रखा जा सकता है। चेयरमैन जो है मस्ट बी रिटायर्ड CJI, चेयरमैन रिटायर्ड CJI होता है। देखो CJI फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए एप्लीकेबल नहीं है, बट यहाँ पर ये बन सकता है नेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन का, ये चेयरपर्सन बन सकता है CJI, तो ये ध्यान रखने वाली बात है। मेंबर्स देखो टू मेंबर्स यहाँ का रहता है, 2 जो कि मस्ट बी सर्विंग और रिटायर्ड SC जज होगा, और 3 हैविंग नॉलेज ऑफ प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंस विद रिगार्ड्स टू ह्यूमन राइट्स विद एटलीस्ट 1 वोमेन, तो एक वोमेन भी होना चाहिए। और ये सिमिलर टू मेंबर ऑफ UPSC, क्या था ये कॉलम था आपका रिमूवल के बारे में। तो UPSC मेंबर किसको कैसे रिमूवल होता है, UPSC सेकंड वाला था UPSC वाला, तो ये प्रेसिडेंट है ना, प्रेसिडेंट इसको रिमूव करेगा। ठीक, अब देखो इसका रेजिग्नेशन भी प्रेसिडेंट को देना पड़ेगा। री अपॉइंटमेंट अलाउड, ये क्या है, हाँ री अपॉइंटमेंट अलाउड, तो मतलब फार्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट भी, बट फार्दर अच्छा ये अपॉइंटमेंट है, अच्छा अपॉइंटमेंट एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट अलग है क्या, अच्छी बात है भाई, फिर चलो फार्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट नॉट अलाउड बट री अपॉइंटमेंट अलाउड है। अच्छा इसका थोड़ा देखना पड़ेगा। अब ये मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम अफेयर्स के अंदर आता है। आर एम्पावर्ड टू यूटिलाइज द सर्विस ऑफ एनी ऑफिसर और investigating agency of central or state government possesses powers of a civil court during its proceedings. It can only look into matters within 1 year of their occurrence, and it recommends the government regarding due action, non-binding, but it must be informed of actions taken on its recommendation within 1 month or move the SCs or concerned high court. तो 1 साल पुराना केस को ही उठा सकता है नेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन जो है। अब देखो स्टेट्स का भी है, तो स्टेट ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन ये आई थिंक सेम ही काम है। अब ये वही एक्ट के अकॉर्डिंग बना है। चेयरपर्सन एंड 2 अदर मेंबर्स इसका रहेगा, गवर्नर इसका अपॉइंटमेंट करेगा, और 3 इयर्स इसका सेम ही है एज क्राइटेरिया। क्या वो टर्म है। अब देखो चेयरमैन जो होगा मस्ट बी ए रिटायर्ड सीजे या सीजेआई और जज ऑफ हाई कोर्ट, मेंबर्स रिटायर्ड और सर्विंग जज of high court, district judge with minimum 7 years experience and a person with knowledge and practical experience with respect to human rights। तो बेसिकली जज जो होती है कोर्ट्स का वो ही इसका मेंबर बनता है। ओके और यहाँ पर भी सिमिलर टू मेंबर मतलब रिमूवल का जो प्रोसेस होगा इसका रेजिग्नेशन आपको गवर्नर को देना पड़ेगा और रीअपॉइंटमेंट अलाउड बट फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट नॉट अलाउड है, तो मिनिस्ट्री है नहीं। SHRC कैन एक्वायर इनटू वायलेशन ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स ओनली इन रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ सब्जेक्ट मेंशन्ड इन द स्टेट और कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट प्लस प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स एक्ट 1993 प्रोवाइड्स फॉर द एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स कोर्ट इन एवरी डिस्ट्रिक्ट बाय स्टेट गवर्नमेंट विद द कंकरेंस ऑफ CJHC। नाउ सेंट्रल इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन इसका फंक्शन क्या है देखो, इंक्वायरी इनटू कंप्लेंट्स रिगार्डिंग RTI प्रोसेस एंड रेस्पॉन्सेज पर्टेनिंग टू ऑफिसेस फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस PSUs etc अंडर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड ड्यूटीज व्हाइल इंक्वायरिंग होल्ड्स पावर सिमिलर टू ए सिविल कोड। और ये एस्टेब्लिश किया था RTI एक्ट 2005 के अकॉर्डिंग, फॉर्म बाय एग्जीक्यूटिव एक्शन। चीफ इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर इसमें मेंबर बनते हैं, अप टू 10 इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर यहाँ पर होता है, प्रेसिडेंट इसको अपॉइंटमेंट करता है और एज प्रेस्क्राइब्ड बाय सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट इसका जो टर्म होता है या फिर अप टू 65 ईयर्स ऑफ एज। पर्सन्स ऑफ एमिनेंस इन पब्लिक लाइफ विथ वाइड नॉलेज एंड एक्सपीरियंस इन लॉ, science and technology, social service management, journalism, mass media or administration and governance, so given they are not an MP, MLA, MLC, do not hold an office of profit or connected to any political party। तो ये क्या है, सेंट्रल इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन। अच्छा अब देखो एज प्रेस्क्राइब्ड बाय सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और अप टू 65 ईयर्स ऑफ एज, ये तो पढ़ लिया। अब ये क्या है कि कैन बी रिमूव बाय प्रेसिडेंट ओनली इन केसेस ऑफ इंसॉल्वेंसी, कन्विक्शन टू एन ऑफेंस इन्वॉल्विंग मोरल टर्पिट्यूड, ऑफिस ऑफ प्रॉफिट और इन्फॉर्मिटी ऑफ माइंड और बॉडी, मिसबिहेवियर। तो ये कुछ जैसे पहले भी पढ़ा हमने, तो ये रेजिग्नेशन भी प्रेसिडेंट को देना पड़ता है। फर्दर रीअपॉइंटमेंट नॉट अलाउड और मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ पर्सनल के अंदर आता है। CIC हैज सुओ मोटो पावर्स टू ऑर्डर इंक्वायरी इनटू मैटर्स इफ देयर आर फाउंड रीजनेबल ग्राउंड, सबमिट्स इट्स रिपोर्ट टू सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट व्हिच प्लेसेस इट बिफोर द पार्लियामेंट। नेक्स्ट देखते हैं स्टेट इन्फॉर्मेशन कमीशन, तो वही काम एक ही होगा ना, सेम ही है, बाकी सब देखो सेम ही है, बट इसको जो रेजिग्नेशन है गवर्नर देगा, अपॉइंटमेंट भी गवर्नर करवाएगा, बाकी सारे सेम ही है। SIC है सुओ मोटो पावर्स ऑर्डर फाउंड, ये सेम ही है। चलिए नेक्स्ट देखते हैं सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमीशन, तो इसका फंक्शन है एपेक्स विजिलेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया फॉर प्रिवेंटिंग एंड इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग करप्शन एलिगेशन। तो इसको सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमीशन जो करप्शन की चार्जेस लाएंगे उसको एपेक्स बॉडी है। सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमिश्नर 2003 सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमिश्नर होगा, इसका अप टू 2 विजिलेंस कमिश्नर होगा। प्रेसिडेंट इसका अपॉइंटमेंट देगा, अप टू 4 ईयर्स इसका टर्म होगा या फिर 65 ईयर्स एज और सिमिलर टू CIC मतलब सेंट्रल इंफॉर्मेशन सॉरी क्या पढ़ा हमने, हाँ सेंट्रल इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन CIC। तो प्रेसिडेंट को पास इसका रेजिग्नेशन जाएगा और फर्दर एम्प्लॉयमेंट नॉट अलाउड है। मिनिस्टर ऑफ पर्सनल के अंदर आता है। इनिशियली एस्टेब्लिश थ्रू एग्जीक्यूटिव रेजोल्यूशन अपन रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ संथनम कमीशन, तो ये संथनम कमीशन के रिकमेंडेशन पे बनी थी सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमीशन। अब देखो सेंट्रल ब्यूरो ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन, सो एक्ट्स एज द मेन इन्वेस्टिगेशन एजेंसी ऑफ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड असिस्ट CVC दैट इज सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमीशन। तो बेसिकली CBI की बात करें, यहाँ पर दे देना चाहिए था शॉर्ट फॉर्म सेंट्रल ब्यूरो ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन CBI, और यहाँ पर असिस्ट CVC एंड लोकपाल इन देयर इन्वेस्टिगेशन, ठीक है, तो हेल्प करता है इसको इन्वेस्टिगेट करता है। और अटैच्ड ऑफिस अंडर मिनिस्टर ऑफ पर्सनल डिराइव्स इट्स पावर फ्रॉम दिल्ली स्पेशल पुलिस एस्टेब्लिशमेंट एक्ट 1946, डायरेक्टर ऑफ CBI, नंबर ऑफ जॉइंट डायरेक्टर्स DIG SPs एंड अदर पुलिस पर्सनल, डायरेक्टर जनरल सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ऑन द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ कमिटी अकॉर्डिंग टू लोकपाल एक्ट 2014 consisting PM, लीडर ऑफ ऑपोजिशन इन लोकसभा एंड CJI जज ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट। देन अकॉर्डिंग टू CVC एक्ट सिक्योरिटी ऑफ 2 years tenure विथ एलिजिबिलिटी टू बी रीअपॉइंटेड थ्राइस। अच्छा तो इसको रीअपॉइंटमेंट दिया जा सकता है, तो लिखा है अकॉर्डिंग टू CVC अरे एक्ट सिक्योरिटी ऑफ 2 years tenure विथ एलिजिबिलिटी टू बी रीअपॉइंटेड थ्राइस, तो 3 बार रीअपॉइंटमेंट इसका हो सकता है। ये भी मिनिस्टर ऑफ पर्सनल के अंदर आता है। एंड एस्टेब्लिश्ड ऑन द रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ संथनम कमेटी, ये भी संथनम कमेटी के रिकमेंडेशन पे बनी थी। इट लुक्स इनटू क्राइम्स रिलेटेड टू करप्शन, इकोनॉमिक ऑफेंसेज एंड सीरियस एंड ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम अपार्ट फ्रॉम टेररिज्म। तो CBI जो है टेररिज्म इसके जो अंदर मतलब उसका इन्वेस्टिगेशन ये नहीं करते टेररिज्म का, बाकी करता है जो भी बड़े है ना, क्या लिखा था इसमें, crimes related to corruption, economic offenses and serious and organized crime except terrorism. Then National Disaster Management Agency NDMA, तो एपेक्स बॉडी फॉर डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट इन इंडिया, डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एक्ट 2005, प्राइम मिनिस्टर इसका जो है वो चेयरमैन बनते हैं, क्या चेयरमैन है ये, क्या लिखा था इसमें, हाँ कॉम्पोजिशन मतलब मेंबर्स का कौन कौन होता है, अब देखो, तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर होगा, एक्स ऑफिशियो चेयरमैन, अप टू 9 मेंबर्स नॉमिनेटेड बाय द चेयरपर्सन ऑफ NDMA, चेयरपर्सन PM है, तो अच्छा एक्स ऑफिशियो चेयरमैन, चेयरपर्सन सेमी है क्या, PM ही रिकमेंड करेगा आई थिंक, पता नहीं। अब ये मिनिस्टर ऑफ होम अफेयर्स का अंडर आता है, तो जो डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट है ये मिनिस्टर ऑफ होम अफेयर्स का अंडर आता है। और SDMA कॉम्पोजिशन होचे CM एक्स ऑफिशियो चेयरमैन, मतलब स्टेट लेवल का जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैनेजमेंट होगा, एजेंसी है फॉर एजेंसी, तो इसका CM होगा, चेयरपर्सन ऑफ स्टेट एग्जीक्यूटिव कमिशन होगा, एक्स ऑफिशियो CO एंड अप टू 8 मेंबर्स नॉमिनेटेड बाय चेयरमैन। DDMA कॉम्पोजिशन होचे कलेक्टर डिस्ट्रिक्ट डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एजेंसी, कलेक्टर होगा DM और कलेक्टर DM, एक्स ऑफिशियो चेयरमैन। CEO ऑफ DDMA अपॉइंटेड बाय स्टेट गवर्नमेंट SP, CM ऑफ डिस्ट्रिक्ट इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ लोकल अथॉरिटी, को चेयरपर्सन अप टू 2 डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल ऑफिसर अपॉइंटेड बाय स्टेट गवर्नमेंट। उसके बाद देखो एक लोकपाल, तो ये ओम्बड्समैन अगेंस्ट द टिरानी ऑफ ऑफिशियल डॉम, हमने लोकपाल चैप्टर पढ़े थे, लोकपाल एंड लोकायुक्तोस एक्ट 2013। देन चेयरपर्सन प्लस अप टू 8 मेंबर, 50% सर्व जुडिशियल मेंबर एंड 50% मस्ट कम फ्रॉम एमंग्स SC ST OBC माइनॉरिटीज एंड वुमेन। प्रेसिडेंट इसको अपॉइंटमेंट करता है ऑन द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ सिलेक्शन कमिटी कॉन्सिस्टिंग ऑफ PM, स्पीकर ऑफ लोकसभा या लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन। तो ये LOP था ना एक लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन, तो वहाँ पर तो वही है, देखो LOP ए लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन इन लोकसभा, CJI और सिटिंग जज ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट एंड एमिनेंट जूरिस्ट। देन ये भी मिनिस्टर ऑफ पर्सनल का अंडर आता है, और अंडर द परव्यू ऑफ लोकपाल PM मिनिस्टर्स MPs एंड ऑफिसर्स फ्रॉम ऑल ग्रुप्स ABCD, तो अंडर द परव्यू ऑफ लोकपाल। अच्छा, तो PM मिनिस्टर MP सारे ये लोकपाल का अंडर इसको कर सकते हैं, और जो भी ऑफिसर्स होंगे ABC या D ग्रुप का उसको भी ये वो जांच कर सकता है आई थिंक। तो इट कैन नॉट अंडरटेक एक्शन सुओ मोटो। लोकायुक्तोस कॉम्पोजिशन एंड फंक्शंस वेरी फ्रॉम स्टेट टू स्टेट, और लोकायुक्तोस जो है उसका फंक्शन स्टेट वाइज वेरी करता है। तो ये PDF ये सर ने शेयर किया था टेलीग्राम चैनल से, मैंने उठाया और इसको पढ़ने की कोशिश की। ओके, तो थोड़ी बहुत समझ में आया, याद रखना होगा, तो उसके लिए रिवीजन ज़रूरी है, तो हम करते रहेंगे रिवीजन, ठीक है। हम इसको फर्स्ट टाइम पढ़ रहे हैं और थोड़ा बैक टू ट्रैक आने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। तो चलिए हम नेक्स्ट देखते हैं, नेक्स्ट हमको क्या पढ़ना है देखते हैं। तो ये वाला चैप्टर पढ़ना है कंपैरिजन ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, जो कि वर्ल्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, मतलब वर्ल्ड के बाकी सारे कंट्रीज के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को कंपेयर किया गया है इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के साथ। तो ये लगभग 23 पेजेस का डॉक्यूमेंट है, PDF है, सर ने उसका टेलीग्राम चैनल पे शेयर किया था। तो इसको हम पढ़ेंगे और लर्न करने की कोशिश करेंगे। चलिए, तो देखिए अमेरिकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। द अमेरिकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका व्हिच वाज फॉर्म्ड इन 1787 फॉलोइंग द अमेरिकन रिवॉल्यूशन 1775 से लेकर 1783 में। तो 1787 में अमेरिकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बन गया था। The Constitution was adopted in 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention and came into force in 1789. The salient features of the American Constitution are explained as follows. So, written Constitution. The American Constitution is usually cited as a classic example of a written Constitution. In fact, it is the oldest among the existing written Constitution of the world. It is contained in a document of some 12 pages and consists of a preamble, 7 articles and 27 amendments. Only 12 pages? But 12 pages का constitution कैसे हो सकता है इतना छोटा? Then देखो rigid constitution. Unlike the British constitution, the American constitution is a rigid one. It cannot be amended by the Congress in the same manner as the ordinary laws are made. It can be amended by the Congress only by means of special process provided by the Constitution for that purpose. Therefore, in the USA, there exists a distinction between a constitutional law and an ordinary law. The American Constitution, the most rigid constitution in the world, lays down the following two methods for its amendment. तो ये most rigid constitution है American Constitution. An amendment can be proposed by 2/3 votes of both the houses of the Congress. It should be ratified by the legislatures of 3/4, 30 out of 50 of the states within a 7-year time span. इतना टाइम दिया जाता है. Alternatively, an amendment can be proposed by a constitutional convention called by the Congress on the petition of 2/3 of the state. तो 50 states है legislature. It should be ratified by the convention in 3/4 of the state legislature. तो कांग्रेस के लिए है 2/3 एंड स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर के लिए है 3/4. Hence, the procedure prescribed by the American Constitution for its amendment is very difficult, complicated and slow. 7 years तक टाइम ले जाता है. Its rigid character is evident from the fact that it has been amended only 27 times since its promulgation in 1789. Only 27 times इसको amend किया गया है. कितना rigid है. Okay, now federal constitution. USA is a federal state. In fact, the USA is the first and the oldest federal state in the modern world. It is a federal republic comprising 50 states, originally 13 states, तो पहले इसका 13 स्टेट था, and the District of Columbia. ठीक है, तो 50 स्टेट्स है प्लस अलग से डिस्ट्रिक्ट ऑफ कोलंबिया है. द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रोवाइड्स फॉर डिवीजन ऑफ पावर्स बिटवीन द फेडरल सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. इट कॉन्फर्स लिमिटेड एंड स्पेसिफाइड पावर्स ऑन द सेंटर and vests the residuary powers which are not enumerated in the constitution in the states. तो residuary powers जो होगा स्टेट्स के पास रहता है, बट हमारे इंडिया में सेंटर के पास है. ये स्टेट हैज इट्स ओन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. हर एक स्टेट का एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, इलेक्टेड लेजिस्लेचर है, गवर्नर है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट है. प्रेसिडेंशियल गवर्नमेंट. अनलाइक द ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, द अमेरिकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रोवाइड्स for the presidential form of government. The features of the American presidential system of government are as follows. The American president is both the head of state and the head of government. इसका प्रेसिडेंट जो है दोनों का ही हेड होता है. As the head of state, he or she occupies a ceremonial position. As the head of government, he or she leads the executive organ of government. The president of the USA is the chief real executive. हमारे यहाँ PM होता है. The president is elected by an electoral college for a fixed tenure of 4 years. इसका tenure होता है 4 years होता है, हमारे यहाँ 5 year है. He or she cannot be removed by the Congress except by impeachment for a grave unconstitutional act. रिमूव करना भी बहुत डिफिकल्ट होता है. The president governs with the help of the cabinet or a similar body called kitchen cabinet. It is only an advisory body and consists of non-elected departmental secretaries. They are selected and appointed by him or her and are responsible only to him or her. They can also be removed by him or her at any time. देखिए यहाँ पर जेंडर को भी कंसिडर करके लिखा गया है. हिम और हर लिखा जा रहा है, ही और सी लिखा जा रहा है. The president and his or her secretaries are not responsible to the Congress for their acts. They neither possess membership in the Congress nor attend its session. The president cannot dissolve the House of Representatives, the lower house of the Congress. Now, separation of powers. The doctrine of separation of powers is the basis of the American constitutional system. The legislative, executive and judicial powers of the government are separated and vested in the 3 independent organs of the government. The first 3 articles of the Constitution clearly manifest this feature of the Constitution. Article 1 says that all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress. Article 2 states that the executive powers shall be vested in the President. Article 3 provides that the judicial powers shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Checks and balances. The system of checks and balances in the American Constitution is an outcome of the adoption of the principle of separation of powers. It enables each organ of the government to exercise partial control on others so that no organ becomes autocratic and irresponsible. This means that no organ of government has unrestricted powers even in its own sphere. Some aspects of the working of the system of checks and balances in the American constitutional system are The President can veto the bills passed by the Congress. He or she enjoys two kinds of vetoes, pocket veto and qualified veto. The Senate confirms the higher appointments made and international treaties concluded by the President. The Congress determines the organization and appellate jurisdiction of the judiciary. The President appoints the judges with the consent of the Senate. The Supreme Court can declare the congressional laws and presidential orders as ultra vires. Now, supremacy of constitution and judicial review. The American Constitution embodies the principle of hierarchy of laws. The written Constitution is regarded as the highest supreme or fundamental law of the land. The statutes of the Congress and state legislatures must conform to the supreme law. If the statutes are against the provisions of the Constitution, they can be declared by the Supreme Court as ultra vires and hence null and void. The Supreme Court thus acts as custodian of the Constitution through its power of judicial review. Next, Bill of Rights. The American Constitution is the first constitution in the world to carry the Bill of Rights. It guarantees a large number of rights to the people. It says that no person is to be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. These rights impose restrictions on the authority of the government. The Supreme Court acts as the protector of these rights through its power of judicial review. This Bill of Rights was added to the original Constitution in 1791 through the first 10 amendments. Bicameralism. The American federal legislature, called Congress, is bicameral, that is, it consists of two houses, namely the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate is the upper house, while the House of Representatives is the lower house. The Senate consists of 100 members, two being elected from each state to serve for a fixed 6-year term. The House of Representatives consists of 435 members elected from single-member constituencies to serve for a fixed 2-year term. The Senate is the more powerful chamber of the Congress. In fact, the American Senate is the most powerful second chamber, upper house in the world. Then American President की बात करें तो mode of election देखो. The American Constitution provides for an indirect election of the President. However, the growth of political parties and political conventions has converted it into a direct election. Constitutionally, the President is elected by an electoral college constituted for the purpose. The members of this college, called as presidential electors, are elected directly by the people of all the states. The number of presidential electors in each state is equal to the number of its members in the Congress, both in House of Representatives and in the Senate. It means that the electoral college consists of as many members as is the total strength of the houses of the Congress. Additionally, 3 votes have been given to the District of Columbia, a federal enclave and not a state. So District of Columbia state नहीं है, एक federal enclave है. Thus the total strength of the electoral college is 538. 435 is the strength of the House of Representatives, 100 is the strength of the Senate, and 3 members of the District of Columbia. And a candidate, in order to win the presidential election, needs 270 votes, that is 269, half of the total votes of 538 plus 1. Then it must be stressed here that the members of the electoral college are not the members of the Congress. The college is a special body which is formed only for electing the president, and it gets dissolved after this. If no candidate secures the requisite majority, the House of Representatives elects the president from among the 3 candidates securing the highest votes in the electoral college. There have been 3 such occasions, 1800, 1824 and 1876. ऐसा भी हुआ है. Qualifications, term and removals. According to the Constitution, a candidate for the presidency must have the following 3 qualifications. He or she must be a natural born citizen of the USA. A naturalized citizen is not eligible. He or she must have attained the age of 35 years. He or she must have been a resident of the USA for 14 years, not necessarily consecutive. The president holds the office for a fixed tenure of 4 years. He or she is eligible for re-election but only once. The 22nd Amendment Act of 1951 has fixed the maximum total term for any president at 10 years. In other words, it bars any person from being elected as president more than twice. The presidential term of 4 years begins on 20th January. The president may be removed from the office before the expiry of his or her normal tenure of 4 years through impeachment for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. The House of Representatives initiates the impeachment proceedings by a majority vote. The case is then tried by the Senate.
During this trial period, the Senate acts as a judicial tribunal and is presided over the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and not the Vice President. If the Senate also passes the impeachment resolution by a two-thirds majority, the President stands impeached. So far, no American president has ever been removed by impeachment. However, there have been 5 impeachment attempts: Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump first time in 2019 and Donald Trump second time in 2021. इसको 2 बार impeachment कराने की ट्राई किया गया था बट नहीं हो पाया. अच्छा, then powers and functions. The American presidency is one of the strongest democratic offices in the world. Lord Bryce regards it as the Lord Bryce regards it as the greatest office in the world. Monroe observed the American president exercises the largest amount of authority ever wielded by any man in a democracy. Og regards him or her as the greatest ruler of the world. Harold Lasky remarked, the President of the United States is both more and less than a king. He or she is also both more or less than a prime minister. The President derives his powers and functions from 4 sources: Constitution, statutes of Congress, judicial interpretations, and political conventions. These are mentioned below. He or she has to enforce the Constitution, federal laws and treaties, and judicial decisions throughout the country. He or she is the supreme commander of the armed forces of the US. He or she appoints the Supreme Court judges, ambassadors, heads of executive departments, diplomatic officials, consuls, and other top officials. He or she formulates foreign policy and conducts foreign affairs of the US. He or she can grant pardon and reprieve for offenses against federal laws, except in cases of impeachment. When a bill approved by both the houses of the Congress is sent to him or her for his or her assent, he or she has 3 options before him or her. He or she may give his or her assent to the bill and the bill then becomes an act. He or she may reject the bill and return it to the Congress within 10 days. However, if the same bill is repassed by the Congress by a 2/3 majority, then the bill becomes a law and the President has to sign it. तो इंडिया की तरह है. दिस इज नोन एज क्वालिफाइड वीटो. तो इसको क्वालिफाइड वीटो बोला जाता है. 10 डेज के अंदर इसको करना पड़ता है, नहीं तो ऑटोमेटिक पास हो जाता है. सॉरी, रिटर्न अगर आ जाए, मैं रिजेक्ट द बिल एंड रिटर्न इट टू द कांग्रेस विद इन 10 डेज के अंदर इसको वापस भेजना पड़ता है. फिर अगर वो रिपास हो गया तो फिर ये जो है लॉ बन जाता है बिल से. ठीक है, पास हो जाता है बिल. ओके, और तीसरा ऑप्शन क्या है? ही और सी में रिजर्व द बिल विथ हिम, देन द बिल बिकम्स अ लॉ आफ्टर द एक्सपायरी ऑफ 10 डेज विथ आउट हीज और हर एसेंट. अगर 10 डेज के अंदर ये वापस नहीं किया तो फिर ये ऑटोमेटिकली वो पास हो जाता है. हाउएवर इफ द कांग्रेस एंड्स द सेशन बिफोर 10 डेज, देन द बिल ऑटोमेटिकली डाइज. बट अगर सेशन एंड हो जाता है तो ऑटोमेटिकली बिल जो है बिल ख़त्म हो जाता है, वो पास नहीं होते, उसको पॉकेट वीटो बोला जाता है. He or she can send messages to the Congress proposing some legislative measures, either orally delivered to the House or sent in the form of a document. He or she can call special sessions of the Congress for consideration of urgent matters. He or she prepares the national budget and submits it to the Congress for approval. He or she is empowered to make rules and regulations in the form of executive orders. This is known as delegated legislation. He or she is empowered to adjourn the Congress when there is a disagreement between 2 houses on the date of adjournment. British Constitution. The British Constitution is the constitution of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Great Britain consists of England, Wales and Scotland. England and Wales. अच्छा, तो हम ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की देख रहे हैं. द ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ द यूनाइटेड किंगडम ऑफ ग्रेट ब्रिटेन एंड नॉर्दर्न आयरलैंड. अच्छा, तो नॉर्दर्न आयरलैंड का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन भी ब्रिटिश का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन सेम है. ग्रेट ब्रिटेन कॉन्सिस्ट ऑफ इंग्लैंड, वेल्स, स्कॉटलैंड. इंग्लैंड एंड वेल्स और तो ये इंग्लैंड, वेल्स एंड स्कॉटलैंड लेकर बने हैं ग्रेट ब्रिटेन. 3 आइलैंड, इंग्लैंड, वेल्स एंड स्कॉटलैंड, उसके साथ नॉर्दर्न आयरलैंड. देन इंग्लैंड एंड वेल्स आर यूनाइटेड इन 1533. तो पहले इंग्लैंड था, बाद में ये वेल्स एंड स्कॉटलैंड, इंग्लैंड एंड वेल्स आर यूनाइटेड इन 1535 एंड स्कॉटलैंड जॉइन देम टू फॉर्म द स्टेट ऑफ ग्रेट ब्रिटेन. तो ये तीनों मिलके ग्रेट ब्रिटेन बनता है. ठीक है, इंग्लैंड, स्कॉटलैंड एंड वेल्स in 1707, while the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was formed in 1921. The British constitutional system is the oldest in the world and is also the oldest democratic system. In fact, the British Constitution is the mother of constitutions. The principles and institutions of representative government are first developed in Britain. The British Constitution is a blend of monarchy, aristocracy and democracy. The salient features of the British Constitution are explained as follows. Unwritten Constitution. Unlike the American Constitution, the British Constitution is unwritten. In the UK, most of the principles governing the distribution and exercise of the governmental powers are not written. Only a small portion of the British Constitution is covered by written documents. The British Constitution is an evolved constitution, not an enacted one. इट इज तो ये देखो इनेक्टेड टर्म जो है ये हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में लिखा प्रीएम्बल में है ना, गलत बोलते हैं क्या? ठीक है, एक बार देख लेना. इट इज ए प्रोडक्ट ऑफ हिस्ट्री एंड रिजल्ट ऑफ इवोल्यूशन. इट इज ए चाइल्ड ऑफ चांस, एक्सीडेंट एज वेल एज यूज टर्म डिजाइन. इट इज नॉट ए स्टैटिक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बट अ रिमार्केबली डायनामिक वन. Hence, L.S. Emery in his book Thoughts on the Constitution says that the British Constitution is a blend of formal law, precedent and tradition. The various elements or sources of the British Constitution are explained as follows. Conventions. Conventions constitute a major element of the British Constitution. These are the unwritten principles of political practices and customary principles of constitutional behavior which have developed in the course of time. J.S. Mill described them as the unwritten maxims of the Constitution. However, unlike the laws, they are not recognized and enforced by judicial courts, but they play a very significant role in the actual working of the British political institutions. They are generally observed as they are backed by tradition and public opinion. The well-known conventions in Britain are: the king or queen should exercise his or her legal powers on the advice of the cabinet headed by the prime minister. The king or queen should appoint the leader of the majority party in the House of Commons as the prime minister. The king or queen should dissolve the lower house of parliament on the advice of the prime minister. The king or queen should give his or her assent to all the bills passed by the parliament. The cabinet is collectively responsible to the House of Commons. Great charters. These are also called constitutional charters or constitutional landmarks. They are historical documents which define the powers of the crown and liberties of the citizens and so on. They have a significant bearing on some of the basic aspects of the British Constitution. The important among such charters are the Magna Carta 1215, the Petition of Rights 1628, the Bill of Rights 1689 and other statutes. These are the laws made by the British Parliament from time to time. They define and regulate the principles, structures and functions of many British political institutions. The important statutes in Britain are the Habeas Corpus Act 1679, the Statute of Westminster 1931, Ministers of the Crown Act 1937, the People's Representation Act 1948 and others. Common law. It is a body of judge-made laws. It has defined some of the significant rules and principles pertaining to the powers of the government and its relationships with the citizens. They are accepted and enforced by judicial courts. Dr. Oak defines common law as the vast body of legal precept and usage which through the centuries has acquired binding and almost immutable character. Legal commentaries. These are the commentaries or textbooks written on the constitutional law of the country by the constitutional experts. They provide insight into the working of the British political institutions. They clarify the meaning and fix the scope of certain constitutional principles. Some of the popular legal commentaries on the British Constitution are A.V. Dicey's Law of the Constitution, Bagehot's English Constitution, Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. ये सब जरूरी है नहीं. Now, flexible constitution. Unlike the American Constitution, the British Constitution is flexible in nature. It requires no special procedure for its amendment. It can be amended by the Parliament in the same manner as the ordinary laws are made. Thus, in Great Britain, there exist no distinction between the constitutional law and ordinary law. Unitary Constitution. Great Britain is a unitary state, hence all the powers of the government are vested in a single supreme central government. The local governments are created only for administrative convenience and they work under the complete control of the central government located at London. They derive their authority from the central government which can also abolish them altogether at any time. Parliamentary government. The British Constitution provides for parliamentary form of government in which the executive hails from the legislature and remains responsible to it. The features of the British parliamentary system of government are as follows. The king or queen is the nominal executive while the cabinet is the real executive. The king or queen is head of the state while the prime minister is head of the government. The party which secures majority seats in the House of Commons forms the government. The leader of that party is appointed as the prime minister by the king or queen. The ministers are individually as well as collectively collectively responsible to the House of Commons for their acts. They remain in office so long as they enjoy the majority support in the House. The King or Queen can dissolve the House of Commons on the advice of the Prime Minister. The ministers, members of the executive, are also the members of the British Parliament. This avoids conflicts between the executive and the legislature and facilitates better coordination between them. Now, sovereignty of parliament. So sovereignty means the supreme power within the state. That supreme power in Great Britain lies with the parliament. Hence, sovereignty of parliament or supremacy of parliament is cardinal principle of the British constitutional law and political system. This principle implies the following things: the British Parliament can make, amend, substitute or repeal any law. D. Law may said the British Parliament can do everything except make a woman a man and a man a woman. The Parliament can make constitutional laws by the same procedure as ordinary laws. In other words, there is no legal distinction between the constituent authority and the law-making authority of the British Parliament. The parliamentary laws cannot be declared invalid by the judiciary as being unconstitutional. In other words, there is no system of judicial review in Great Britain. Rule of law. The doctrine of rule of law is one of the fundamental characteristics of the British constitutional system. It lays down that the law is supreme and hence the government must act according to law and within the limits of the law. A.V. Dicey in his book The Law of the Constitution has given the following three implications of the doctrine of rule of law. Absence of arbitrary power, that is, no man can be punished except for a breach of law. Equality before the law, that is, equal subjection of all citizens, rich or poor, high or low, official or non-official, to the ordinary law of the land administered by the ordinary law courts. The primacy of the rights of the individual, that is, the constitution is the result of the rights of individual as defined and enforced by the courts of law rather than the constitution being the source of the individual rights. The rights of the citizens of Great Britain flow from judicial decisions, not from the constitution. Constitutional monarchy. Great Britain is a monarchical state. It is described as a limited hereditary monarchy. The hereditary monarch, king or queen, is the head of the state. The crown is the visible symbol of the supreme executive power. However, the king or queen only reigns but does not rule. These powers are actually exercised by the cabinet headed by the prime minister. The cabinet is collectively responsible to the parliament for its actions and ultimately to the electorate. Hence, what Great Britain has is a constitutional monarchy. The distinction between the crown and the king is the distinction between the monarchy as an institution and the monarch as a person. In other words, the king is a person, whereas the crown is an institution, the institution of kingship. The king is mortal, whereas the crown is immortal. This is clearly expressed by the popular statement in Great Britain that the king is dead, long live the king. It means that the person who occupied the throne is dead, but the institution of kingship survives. Bicameralism. The British Parliament is bicameral, that is, it consists of two houses, namely the House of Lords and the House of Commons. The House of Lords is the upper house. It is the oldest second chamber in the world. It consists of lords, peers, nobles, and hence represent the aristocratic element of the British political system. At present, it has 677 appointed members who fall into four distinct groups. It is mostly a hereditary body, the House of Lords. Then the House of Commons is the lower house, but more important and powerful than the House of Lords. It is the oldest popular legislative body in the world. It consists of the representatives elected by the people on the basis of universal adult franchise, but there are at present 659 seats in the House of Commons, and these are distributed among England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, British cabinet composition. As the British Constitution provides for parliamentary system of government, the cabinet acts as the real executive authority. It consists of the Prime Minister as its head and 20 or so of his or her most senior ministerial colleagues. It includes the following: Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury and Minister for the Civil Service. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lord Privy Seal, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Lord President of the Council, President of the Board of Trade, Lord Chancellor, First Lord of Admiralty, Postmaster General, Secretaries of State for Home, Foreign, Defence, Social Services, Environment and Education and Science, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Health, Pensions, Transport and Labour, Secretary of State of Scotland, Secretary of State for Wales. It must be mentioned here that the Attorney General, Solicitor General, Lord Advocate and Paymaster General are not members of the British Cabinet.
Then Privy Council. There is close relationship between the cabinet and the Privy Council. This council in its present form came into existence in the 15th century as an advisory body to the British monarch. In the course of time, most of its powers are transferred to the cabinet as its inner committee. Presently, it consists of 330 members and includes inter alia all cabinet ministers, past and present. It is presided over by the Lord President of the Council. Prime Ministerial government. In the past, the British constitutional and political experts had described the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Cabinet as primus inter pares, first among equals. In the recent period, the Prime Minister's power, influence and position have increased significantly vis-a-vis the Cabinet. He or she has come to play a dominant role in the British politico-administrative system. Hence, the later political analysts like Crossman, Mackintosh and others have described the British cabinet government as prime ministerial government. Shadow cabinet. It is a unique institution of the British cabinet system. It is formed by the opposition party to balance the ruling cabinet and to prepare its members for future ministerial office. In Britain, the opposition employs an official recognition and is as well organized as the government. It runs a parallel government with its shadow cabinet. In this shadow cabinet, almost every member in the ruling cabinet is shadowed by a corresponding member in the opposition cabinet. The members of the shadow cabinet watch critically the working of the departments assigned to them. They match the cabinet ministers in the parliamentary debates. The shadow cabinet serves as the alternate cabinet if there is change of government. That is why Ivor Jennings describes the leader of opposition as the alternative prime minister. He or she enjoys the status of a minister and is paid by the government. French Constitution. The French Revolution 1789 to 1799 had a significant impact on the growth of the French constitutional system. Since the revolution, France has changed its constitution on an average after every 12 years. It adopted 3 monarchic, 2 dictatorial, 3 imperial and 4 republican constitutions. The present French constitution, which established the Fifth Republic, came into force in 1958. It was prepared under the instructions of General de Gaulle. It was designed to give France a strong and stable government. The salient features of the constitution of the Fifth French Republic are as follows. Written constitutions. Like the American Constitution, the French Constitution is a written constitution. Originally, it contained a preamble and 92 articles divided into 15 chapters. It declares liberty, equality, and fraternity as the motto of the Fifth Republic. It states France is an indivisible, secular, democratic, and social republic. The chapters of the Constitution are mentioned in Table 92.1. preamble है sovereignty है चैप्टर 1 में, देन 2 में है द प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ द रिपब्लिक. इसका आर्टिकल यहाँ पर दिया गया है, तो ये सब जरूरी है नहीं. चलिए देन देखिए रिजिड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. अनलाइक द ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, द फ्रेंच कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज रिजिड इन नेचर. इट कंटेन्स अ स्पेशल प्रोसीड्यूर फॉर इट्स अमेंडमेंट. इट कैन बी अमेंडेड बाय द पार्लियामेंट बाय 60% majority vote in both the houses. Alternatively, the president can call a national referendum on constitutional amendment. However, the republican form of government in France is not subject to amendment. Thus, there is no place for monarchy in France. Unitary constitution. France is a unitary state. There is no division of powers between the central and local governments. All powers are vested in the single supreme central government located in Paris. The local governments are created and abolished by the central government for administrative convenience. In fact, France is more unitary than Britain. Then quasi-presidential and quasi-parliamentary. The French constitution provides neither presidential nor parliamentary government. Rather, it combines the elements of both. On one hand, it provides for a powerful president who is directly elected by the people for a 5-year term. On the other, there is a nominated council of ministers headed by the prime minister, which is responsible to the parliament. However, the ministers shall not be the members of the parliament. Over a period of time, the provisions of the constitution relating to the mode of election, tenure of office and number of terms of the president of France have been amended. These are mentioned in table 92.2. Then bicameralism. The French parliament comprises the National Assembly, the lower house, and the Senate, upper house. The National Assembly has 577 members who are directly elected for a 5-year term. The Senate has 348 members who are indirectly elected for a 6-year term. The National Assembly is more dominant and powerful than the Senate. Then rationalized parliament. The Constitution of France established a rationalized parliament, that is, a parliament with restricted and limited powers. The powers of the French parliament are restricted vis-a-vis the political executive. It can make laws only on those items which are defined in the Constitution. On all other matters, the government is empowered to legislate by executive decree. The Parliament can also delegate lawmaking power to the executive branch. These limitations on parliamentary authority are imposed to provide for a strong executive. Constitutional Council. France has a Constitutional Council. It consists of 9 members who are appointed for a term of 9 years. It functions as a judicial watchdog and ensures that the executive decrees and parliamentary laws conform to the provisions of the Constitution. However, it is only an advisory body and its opinion is not binding. Recognition of political parties. The Constitution of France gives recognition to political parties and their role. It is for the first time in France that a republican constitution not only mentions parties but also acknowledge them as a normal part of political life. The Constitution states that the parties must respect the principles of national sovereignty and democracy. Now, French president. Mode of election. Originally, the Constitution provided for an indirect election of the president. He or she was to be elected by an electoral college consisting of 3 types of members: national representatives, members of 2 houses of parliament, representatives of the local authorities, and representatives of the overseas territories. However, in 1962, the Constitution was amended through a referendum. The president is now directly elected by universal suffrage. In order to win the election, a candidate has to obtain an absolute majority of the votes cast. In case no candidate obtains the requisite majority in the first ballot, then a second ballot is held. Only the 2 candidates who have received the highest number of votes in the first ballot may stand in the second ballot. Tenure and removal. The president is elected for a term of 5 years. He or she is eligible for re-election, but for another consecutive term only. Moreover, the Constitution has not prescribed any qualifications, including the minimum age limit for the presidential office. If the presidency falls vacant, the functions of the president, except submitting a bill to a referendum and dissolution of the National Assembly, are performed temporarily by the president of the Senate, and if he or she is also not in a position, the functions are performed by the government. The president can be removed from the office before the expiry of his or her normal tenure of 5 years through an impeachment for high treason. The impeachment resolution should be passed by both the houses of parliament by an absolute majority. After this indictment by the parliament, the president is tried by the High Court of Justice. Power and functions. The president is the pivot of constitution and occupies a dominant position in the system of government. He or she is the real head of the state, the leader of the nation, and the symbol of national unity. His or her powers and functions are as follows. He or she appoints the prime minister and accepts his or her resignation. He or she appoints and dismisses the other members of the government council of ministers on the advice of the prime minister, and he or she presides over the meetings of council of ministers. This provides him or her a direct opportunity to influence, guide, direct, and control the policies of the government. He or she makes appointments to civil and military posts of the state. He or she is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the country. He or she negotiates and ratifies treaties and sends and receives diplomats. He or she is kept informed of all the negotiations leading to the conclusion of an international agreement not subject to ratification. He or she presides over the higher councils and committees of national defense. He or she presides over and represents the French community. He or she appoints the president and 3 members of the Constitutional Council. He or she promulgates the laws within 15 days following their final adoption by the parliament and transmission to the government. However, before the end of this period, he or she can ask the parliament to reconsider a law. This reconsideration cannot be refused by the parliament. He or she can send message to the parliament and summon its special sessions. He or she can submit to a referendum any government bill on the proposal of the government during the parliamentary sessions or on the joint proposal of the 2 houses of the parliament. If the bill is approved in the referendum, the president should promulgate it within 15 days. He or she signs the ordinances and decrees that have been considered by the Council of Ministers. He or she has the right to pardon. He or she presides over the higher council of the judiciary. He or she also appoints 9 members to it. He or she is the protector of the independence of the judicial authority. He or she is vested with special powers to deal with emergencies. During this period, he or she can take the required measures after consulting the Prime Minister, the presidents of the 2 assembly houses and of the Parliament, and the Constitutional Council. He or she can dissolve the National Assembly after consulting the Prime Minister and the presidents of the 2 assembly houses of the Parliament. The Constitution, however, imposes 2 limitations. He or she cannot dissolve the National Assembly more than once in 12 months, and the National Assembly cannot be dissolved during an emergency. Notably, the President is not required to follow the advice of the Prime Minister and the presidents of the 2 assemblies. Further, the President can refuse dissolution when asked by the Prime Minister. Then, Japanese Constitution. The modern state of Japan came into existence with the Meiji Restoration in 1868. The Meiji Constitution remained in force for 58 years after 1889 to 1947. This constitution was based on the ideals of autocracy, authoritarianism, and monarchy. After the Second World War, Japan was placed under Allied occupation from 1945 to 1952. The US General Douglas MacArthur was the supreme commander of the Allied powers in Japan. Under his direction, Japan adopted a new democratic constitution in 1946. This constitution is based on the ideals of democracy and peace as conceived by the occupation authorities. The new and the present constitution of Japan became operative in 1947. It came to be known both as MacArthur Constitution as well as the Showa Constitution. Showa is the title of the reign of Emperor Hirohito and means radiant peace. At the time of adoption of the new constitution, Hirohito was the emperor and Saidhara was the Prime Minister of Japan. The salient pages of the present constitution of Japan are as follows: written constitution. So like the American constitution, the Japanese constitution is written constitution. It contains a preamble and 103 articles divided into 11 chapters. It is a unique blend of the American and British system. The preamble emphasizes the principle of the sovereignty of the people. The chapters of the constitution are mentioned. Okay, rigid constitution. Like the American constitution, the Japanese constitution is a rigid one. It cannot be amended by the Diet, Japanese parliament, because Diet बोला जाता है. अच्छा, in the same manner as the ordinary laws are made, it can be amended only by means of special process provided by the constitution for that purpose. Hence, in Japan, there exists a distinction between a constitutional law and an ordinary law. The Japanese constitution lays down the following procedure for its amendment. The amendment shall be initiated by the Diet. Such a proposal must be passed by a majority of 2/3 of its membership. After that, it is submitted to the people for ratification at a special referendum or a specific election. It must be approved by the majority of the people. Amendment, when so ratified, shall immediately be promulgated by the emperor in the name of the people as an integral part of the constitution. It must be mentioned here that the Japanese constitution has not so far been amended even once. Wow, thus the constitution reads today as it did in 1947. क्या बात है यार, एक भी चेंज नहीं हुआ, एक बार भी अमेंड नहीं हुआ जापानीज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. वाओ, सो रियली ये चैप्टर काफ़ी वर्दी है पढ़ने के लिए. मतलब हम पहले चैप्टर में पढ़ते हैं कि इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को तुलना किया जाता है, बट देखो यहाँ पर इंडिया की बात नहीं आ रही है, बट हर देश का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन कैसा है वो डिस्क्राइब किया जा रहा है. और हम अगर इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मतलब पहले वाला चैप्टर हमने पढ़ लिया है लक्ष्मीकांत से, तो हम इजीली कंपेयर कर सकते हैं. और काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है चैप्टर भाई, मैं तो ये बोलूँगा. अब देखो, यूनिटरी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. लाइक द ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, द जापानीज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रोवाइड्स फॉर यूनिटरी स्टेट. देयर इज नो डिवीजन ऑफ पावर्स बिटवीन द सेंट्रल एंड प्रोविंशियल governments. All powers are vested in the single supreme central government located at Tokyo. The provinces derive their authority from the central government. The Diet can expand or diminish the authority and jurisdiction of the provinces. Thus, the provinces are subordinate units of government and enjoy only those powers which are delegated to them by the supreme central government. थोड़ा पॉज यहाँ पर लेंगे, ज़्यादा गर्मी लग रहा है. चलिए. Parliamentary government. Japan has shown a preference for the British parliamentary system rather than the American presidential system of government. The features of the Japanese parliamentary system of government are as follows. The emperor is the nominal executive while the cabinet is the real executive. The cabinet consists of the prime minister as its head and 20 ministers of state. The emperor is the head of the state while the prime minister is head of the government. The party which rescues a secures majority seats in the House of Representatives forms the government. The leader of the majority party or majority coalition invariably becomes the prime minister. The Prime Minister is designated from among the members of the Diet by a resolution of the Diet. The Emperor appoints the Prime Minister as designated by the Diet. The Prime Minister appoints the Minister of State, but a majority of them should be chosen from among the members of the Diet. The Prime Minister can remove the Ministers of State as he or she chooses. The Cabinet, in the exercise of the executive power, is collectively responsible to the Diet. It must resign when the House of Representatives passes a no confidence resolution. The Emperor can dissolve the House of Representatives on the advice of the Prime Minister. An analysis of the above points makes it clear that Japan, though adopted the British parliamentary pattern, differed from Britain in the following four respects. In Britain, the Prime Minister is chosen as well as appointed by the King or Queen, while in Japan, the Prime Minister is chosen by the Diet but appointed by the Emperor. In Britain, the ministers are appointed by the King or Queen, while in Japan, the ministers are appointed by the Prime Minister. In Britain, the Prime Minister cannot remove the ministers, while in Japan, the Prime Minister can remove the ministers at his or her will. In Britain, all the ministers must be members of the Parliament, while in Japan, only a majority of the ministers must be members of the Diet. Constitutional monarchy. Japan is monarchical state. It is described as a limited hereditary monarchy. The constitution, though it preserves this institution of the emperor, it deprives him or her of all powers, privileges and prerogatives he or she formerly exercised and enjoyed. It makes the following provisions with regard to the institution of the emperor. The emperor is the symbol of the state and of the unity of the people. He or she derives his or her position from the will of the people with whom resides sovereign power. Thus, the sovereignty of the emperor is abolished. The imperial throne is dynastic and succeeded to an accordance with the law passed by the Diet. The advice and approval of the cabinet is required for all acts of the emperor. The emperor performs only those acts which are enumerated in the constitution, and he or she has no powers related to government. The emperor can neither give nor receive imperial property without the authorization of the Diet. Thus, the constitution has made the emperor merely a constitutional head. His or her authority is strictly limited to ceremonial functions of a constitutional monarch like his or her British counterpart. He or she only reigns and does not rule. देखो हर कंट्री में लगभग ऐसा एक जो है नॉमिनल हेड है. सुप्रीमेसी ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एंड जुडिशियल रिव्यू एक्सेप्ट इन द यूएसए में प्रेसिडेंट वो सब कुछ है. The Japanese constitution establishes the principle of supremacy of constitution. The constitution is regarded as the supreme highest fundamental law of the land. The laws, ordinances, imperial rescript and official acts must conform to this supreme law. If these are against the provisions of the constitution, they can be declared by the Supreme Court as ultra vires and hence null and void. Thus, the American principle of judicial review is adopted in Japan, but there is a difference. The American Supreme Court does not derive its power of judicial review from the constitution, whereas the Japanese Supreme Court derives its power of judicial review directly from the constitution. The Japanese constitution specifically says that the Supreme Court is the court of last resort with power to determine the constitutionality of any law, order, regulation or official act. Fundamental rights. The Japanese constitution provides for rights on the model of the Bill of Rights in the USA. It guarantees a large number of civil, political and economic rights to the people of Japan and declares them as eternal and inviolate. The judiciary, headed by the Supreme Court, acts as the protector of these rights through its power of judicial review. The rights provided by the Japanese constitution are more elaborate and definite than the American Bill of Rights. Out of a total of 103 articles in the constitution, 31 articles 10 to 40 are devoted to the rights and duties of the people. The rights provided for in the constitution are right to equality, right to freedom of religion, right to private property, economic rights, right to education, cultural rights, right to constitutional remedies. Renunciation of war. The Japanese constitution renounces war as sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as means of settling international disputes. It prohibits Japan from maintaining land, sea and air forces as well as other war potential. It also does not recognize the right of belligerency of the state. Japan is the only modern state which has constitutionally renounced war forever. Wow. So it is the most peculiar as well as the most controversial feature of the Japanese constitution. मतलब इन्होंने war नहीं करेंगे ऐसा बता दिया है, शायद यही बोल रहा है ना कि renunciation of war, renounces war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as means of settling state. तो नहीं करेंगे ये सब. It is the most peculiar as well as the most controversial feature of the Japanese constitution. This provision was got inserted into the constitution by General MacArthur to see that Japan would never again be allowed to act as a military nation as it did during the period of 1931 to 1945, and to abolish forever the power of Japan as a rival to the US in the Far East. However, it does not mean that Japan cannot use arms and other forces for its security and defense. हाँ ये भी बात है. Like any other modern state, Japan has its defense capabilities, but the term used is self-defense forces to look constitutionally correct. Great. They are justified on the ground that every state has an inherent right to defend itself against foreign aggression. Bicameralism. The Japanese Diet is bicameral, that is, it consists of two houses, namely the House of Councillors, upper house, and the House of Representatives, lower house. The House of Councillors consists of 252 members elected for a term of 6 years. Out of the total 252 members, 152 are elected on a geographical basis, local constituencies, and the remaining 100 are elected by the nation at large, national constituency. The House of Representatives consists of 512 members elected for a term of 4 years. The House of Representatives has more powers than the House of Councillors, especially in financial matters. Constitutionally, the Diet is the highest organ of state power and is the organ of the state power and is the sole lawmaking organ of the state. Now, Soviet Constitution. The state of the USSR, also called as the Soviet Union, was formed in 1917 following the Russian Revolution led by the charismatic Lenin. After being a superpower for more than 70 years, the USSR finally collapsed and disintegrated in 1989 to 1991, mainly due to economic crisis. The Russian Revolution of October 1917 created for the first time ever a socialistic state whose goal was communism. Hence, the Soviet Constitution was the first socialist constitution of the world. Since its formation in 1917, the USSR adopted 4 constitutions, that is in 1918, 24, 36, Stalin Constitution, and 1977 Brezhnev Constitution. The constitutional system of the USSR was based on the principles and ideologies of Marxism, Leninism. Thus, the Communist Party dominated the entire political and administrative system of the USSR. It was in this respect that the politico-administrative system of the USSR was different from that of UK, US, and France. The salient features of the Soviet Constitution of 1977 are explained as follows. Written Constitution. Like American and French Constitution, the Soviet Constitution was also written one. It was drafted by a committee headed by Mr. Brezhnev. It had 20 chapters and 174 articles divided into 9 parts. Rigid Constitution. The Soviet Constitution was rigid in nature. It provided for a special procedure for its amendment. It could be amended by the legislature of the USSR Supreme Soviet by a 2/3 majority in each house. Socialistic Constitution. The Constitution was socialistic in nature and laid down the foundation of a socialistic state. It stated that the Union of Soviet Socialistic Republics as a socialist state of the whole people, expressing the will and interest of the workers, peasants, and intelligentsia, the working people of all the nations and nationalities of the country. It also stated that the foundation of the economic system of the USSR is socialist ownership of the means of production in the form of state property belonging to all the people and collective farm and cooperative property. Federal Constitution. The Constitution provided for a federal state consisting of 15 units called Union Republics. These units of the Soviet Federation were Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Lithuania, Moldavia, Latvia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Armenia, Turkmenistan, and Estonia. The powers are divided between the center and the units. The powers of the center are enumerated, while the residuary powers are given to the units, as in the case of the USA. These 15 union republics had their own separate constitutions conforming to the Constitution of the USSR and enjoyed the right to secede from the USSR. Within several union republics existed autonomous republics, 20, autonomous regions, 8, and autonomous areas, 10. They are vested with a certain amount of autonomy. Hence, the union republics are called sub-federations within the Soviet Federation, and the USSR was called a federation of federations. Parliamentary government. The Constitution provided for a parliamentary form of government in the USSR. The Council of Ministers was elected by the Supreme Soviet legislatures of the USSR and remained responsible to it for its policies and acts. The Supreme Soviet could also remove the ministers from their offices. The Constitution stated that the Council of Ministers, headed by the Premier, is the highest executive and administrative authority of the USSR. तो इसको प्रीमियर बोला जाता है, मिनिस्टर हेडेड बाय द प्रीमियर. बाइकैमरलिज्म. द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रोवाइडेड फॉर अ बाइकैमरलिज्म legislature for the USSR. Thus the Supreme Soviet consisted of the Soviet of the Union lower house and the Soviet of the nationalities upper house. Both the houses had equal number of members, that is 715 each, elected directly every 5 years. The lower house represented the nation as a whole while the upper house represented the units of the Soviet Federation. The two houses had equal and coordinated powers in all policy matters. Presidium. The Supreme Soviet, constitutionally the highest body of state authority of the USSR, elected a governing body known as the Presidium. The Constitution termed it as the Standing Committee of the Supreme Soviet. It was a 39-member body consisting of a chairman, first vice chairman, 15 vice chairman, the heads of the 15 Union Republics, a secretary and 21 members. The chairman, president of the Presidium, was the formal head of the state of the USSR. It functioned as a collective presidency of the USSR, hence it was called the collegial executive or the plural executive or the collegiate president of the USSR. It combined executive, legislative, diplomatic, military and judicial functions because of its multifarious functions and the plural character. The Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR has been described as the 20th century innovation. This type of institution was not provided by any other constitution of the world. One-party dictatorship. The most important feature of the constitutional system of the USSR was the monopoly of the political power enjoyed by the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU. The Soviet Constitution stated the leading and guiding force of Soviet society and the nucleus of its political system of all state organizations and public organizations in the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The CPSU exists for the people and serves the people. The Communist Party, armed with Marxism-Leninism, determines the general perspective of the development of society and the course of home and foreign policy of the USSR, directs the great construction work of the Soviet people, and impacts the planned, systematic and theoretically substantiated character up to their struggle for the victory of communism. Democratic centralism. The Constitution stated that the Soviet state is organized and functions on the principle of democratic centralism, namely the electiveness of all bodies of state authority from the lowest to the highest, their accountability to the people, and the obligation of lower bodies to observe the decisions of higher ones. Democratic centralism combines central leadership with local initiatives and creative activity, and with the responsibility of each state body and official for the work entrusted to them. The principle was applicable to governmental organization, hierarchy of the Soviets and the Communist Party organization. Fundamental rights. The Constitution also provided for a large number of economic, social, personal, cultural and political rights to the citizens of the USSR. These rights were guaranteed to all the citizens of the country equally, irrespective of nationality, race, sex and so on. The form of the rights guaranteed to the citizens was socialist, not personal. That is, they were meant to for the establishment of a socialistic system in the USSR. Thus, the enjoyment of these rights by the citizens was not to determine the interest of society or state or the rights of other citizens. The list of fundamental rights provided by the Soviet Constitution are the list है. चलिए इसको हटाओ. Fundamental duties भी था. Apart from the fundamental rights, the Constitution also provided fundamental duties. The Constitution stated the exercise of these rights and freedoms by citizens was inseparable. तो देखो पहली बार ड्यूटीज की बात यहाँ पर आ रहा है राशिया में. Inseparable from the performance of these duties and obligations. The following is the list of fundamental duties contained in the Constitution. यहाँ पर भी 11 ड्यूटीज है. हमारा 10 था. हमारा भी 11 होगा क्या? कितने फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज है? Then देखो Russian Constitution. So Russia was the largest constitution unit. तो सोवियत यूनियन मतलब टूट गया, उसके बाद रशिया बन गया. तो रशिया वाज द लार्जेस्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन यूनिट ऑफ द फॉर्मर यूएसएसआर. इट वाज 75% ऑफ द टोटल एरिया ऑफ द फॉर्मर यूएसएसआर एंड हैड 50% ऑफ इट्स टोटल पॉपुलेशन. इट आल्सो कंट्रीब्यूटेड अबाउट 70% ऑफ द टोटल एग्रीकल्चरल एंड इंडस्ट्रियल आउटपुट ऑफ द फॉर्मर यूएसएसआर. आफ्टर द डिसोल्यूशन ऑफ द यूएसएसआर in December 1991, Russia adopted a new constitution on December 20, 1993. And thus established a new politico-administrative system. The salient features of the Russian constitution are mentioned as follows. It declares Russia as a sovereign and multi-ethnic republican state. It provides for a federal state. The Russian Federation consists of 21 republics, 6 territories, Krai, 49 regions, oblast, and 10 autonomous areas, autonomy, okrug, then 2 cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg, of federal status, and Birobidzhan, Jewish autonomous region. It establishes a liberal democratic order and guarantees fundamental rights to the citizens. Thus, it discards the earlier totalitarian system. It introduces multi-party system and ensures free and fair periodic elections. It provides for the division of the state power among the legislature, executive, and judiciary. These three organs are independent of one another. It establishes bicameral legislature, federal assembly consisting of Federation Council, upper house, State Duma, lower house. The Federation Council consists of 178 members, 2 from each territorial units of the Russian Federation. The State Duma consists of 450 members who are directly elected for a period of 4 years. It declares President of the Russian Federation as head of the state. The President is elected for a term of 4 years by universal and direct suffrage. He or she is head of the executive as well as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. It authorizes the President of the Republic to appoint the chairman and government as the Prime Minister. The President is to appoint other federal ministers on the advice of the Prime Minister. He or she can also dismiss the Prime Minister or any other federal minister. It provides for a 19-member constitutional court. Its function is to decide the constitutionality of the presidential decrees, government orders, and laws of the Federal Assembly. It authorizes the Russian legislature, Federal Assembly, to remove the president by way of impeachment on the charge of high treason or grave crime. The resolution of impeachment should be approved by both the houses by 2/3 majority. तो ये हो गया राशियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. अब देखते हैं चाइनीज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. ओके, सो चाइनीज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और स्विस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन दो बाकी है, देख लेते हैं इसको. After the Communist Revolution, New Democratic Revolution, led by the Communist Party of China, the chairman Mao Zedong as its leader, the People's Republic of China was formed in 1949. Since then, China adopted 4 constitutions: 1954, 1975, 1978, and 1982. The fourth and the present constitution of 1982 was drafted by National Constitution Revision Committee set up by the National People's Congress (NPC). The draft constitution, after it was approved by the Standing Committee of the NPC, was submitted to the people for nation-wide discussions. Finally, the draft constitution was adopted by the NPC and promulgated for its implementation by the announcement of the NPC on December 4, 1982. Its salient features are as follows: written constitution. The Chinese constitution is written constitution. It consisted rigid constitution. Chinese constitution is rigid constitution. Then socialistic constitution. The Chinese constitution is socialistic in nature and lays down the foundation of a socialistic state. It declares that China is a socialist state governed by a people's democratic dictatorship that is led by the working class and based on an alliance of workers and peasants. It further declares that the socialist system is the fundamental system of China. Leadership by the CPC is the defining feature of socialism with the Chinese characteristics, and it is prohibited for any organization or individual to damage the socialist system. Next, the unitary constitution. The Chinese constitution establishes a unitary state rather than a federal state. The preamble declares that China is a unitary multinational state built up jointly by the people of all its nationalities. There is no division of powers between the central and provincial governments. All powers are vested on the single supreme central government located at Beijing. The provincial governments derive their authority from the delegation made by the central government. They are created or abolished by the central government, not only for administrative convenience. Parliamentary government. So the Chinese constitution provides a parliamentary form of government. According to the constitution, the State Council of China, namely the Central People's Government, is the executive organ of the highest state organ of power, NPC, and it is the highest state administrative organ. The State Council, headed by a premier, is responsible to the NPC and reports to the NPC on its work. The premier is chosen by the NPC based on the nomination of the President of China, and the other members of the State Council are chosen by the NPC based on the nomination of the premier, the President of China, pursuant to decisions of the NPC. Appoints or removes the premier and other members of the State Council. The premier directs the work of the State Council and presides over its meetings, but his or her authority cannot be compared with that of the Indian Prime Minister or the British Prime Minister. The head of the state, the President of China, is an elected executive. He or she is elected by the NPC for a term of 5 years. Any citizen of China who has the right to vote and stand for election, मतलब सारे सिटीजन का वोट देने का अधिकार है नहीं, and who has reached the age of 45 is eligible for election as the president. However, the president is only a ceremonial executive and not a real executive. Hence, his or her authority cannot be compared with that of the American president. Unicameralism. The Chinese constitution provides for a unicameral legislature, that is the NPC, constitutionally. अच्छा, यहाँ पर तो ठीक ही है, हु हैज़ द राइट टू वोट, मतलब सारे लोग कैसे वोट देंगे, बच्चे लोग तो वोट नहीं देते ना किसी भी कंट्री में, ठीक है. यूनिकैमरलिज्म. द चाइनीज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रोवाइड्स फॉर यूनिकैमरल लेजिस्लेचर, दैट इज एनपीसी. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली द एनपीसी इज द हाईएस्ट स्टेट ऑर्गन ऑफ पावर एंड एक्सरसाइजेस द लेजिस्लेटिव पावर ऑफ द स्टेट. इट इज composed of deputies elected from the provinces, autonomous regions. It is directly under the jurisdiction of central government, special administrative regions and armed forces. The number of deputies and the procedures for their election are prescribed by law. Hence, their number varies from time to time. It is approximately 3,000. The NPC is elected for a term of 5 years. Its permanent organ is the standing committee consisting of approximately 200 members. Communist Party leadership. The Chinese constitution recognizes a multi-party system in the country, but at the same time it also clearly establishes the leadership role of the CPC. The preamble says that the system of multi-party cooperation and political consultation under the leadership of the CPC will continue and develop long into the future. It also says that the Chinese people of all ethnic groups will continue under the leadership of the CPC and the guidance of Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong, Thought Deng Xiaoping theory. The theory of three represents the scientific outlook on development, and Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. To uphold the people's democratic leadership, stay on the socialist road and develop the socialist market economy. Further, Article 1 declares that leadership by the CPC is the defining feature of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Democratic centralism. The Chinese constitution declares that the state institutions shall practice the principle of democratic centralism. The NPC and the local people's congresses at all levels are created through democratic elections and are responsible to the people and are also subject to their oversight. Also, all administrative, supervisory, adjudicatory and procuratorial organs of the state are created by the people's congresses and are responsible to them and are also subject to their oversight. Further, the division of functions and powers between the central and local state institutions should honor the principle of giving full play to the initiative and motivation of local authorities under the unified leadership of the central authorities. Fundamental rights. The constitution provides for a large number of rights to the citizens of China. They include civil, political, personal, economic, social and cultural rights, but the enjoyment of these rights by the citizens should not undermine the interests of the state or society or collectives or the rights of the other citizens. The list of rights is as follows. तो ये सब राइट्स है. ओके, फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज भी कुछ है. चलिए, इसे पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. द स्विस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. टिल नाउ स्विट्जरलैंड adopted three constitutions, 1848, 1874, 1919. The constitution of 1848 established the federal state in Switzerland. This constitution was replaced by the next constitution of 1874. After a long period of 125 years, the second constitution was replaced by the third constitution of 1999. At present, the third constitution is continuing in Switzerland. It was adopted by the Federal Assembly on 18th December 1998. Subsequently, it was approved by the people and the cantons on 18th April 1999. Finally, it came into force in 1st January 2000. Wow, so ये date important है, 1st January 2000. Its salient features are explained below. Written